Good afternoon. My name is Alex Pradhan, and I lead product strategy at Galt Solutions, a market-leading supply chain planning solution. In my role, I talk to hundreds of global organizations and work with them to drive their digital supply chain journey. Many companies are under pressure to deliver results under extremely challenging circumstances and in an environment where there is a lot of supply chain shocks and disruptions. And this requires companies to transform their S&OP process and move away from being fragile and rigid to effectively being able to manage the complexities that they're facing today. Now, today, I will be sharing real-world stories from some of our customers and how they've evolved their S&OP process to tackle today's challenges and how supply chain planning technology is supporting them. Now, today's environment, there's just a lot of uncertainty, complexity, and volatility. Now, this probably comes as no surprise to people who are listening into this session. Now, according to McKinsey, companies experience material disruption lasting a month or longer every 3.7 years on average. Now, this stat came from a report back in August of 2020. However, I would argue that in today's environment, we are seeing disruptions occur much more frequently, and we're going to continue to see these disruptions continue with a lot more frequency as companies go into 2022 and beyond. We're not going to be going back to normal. Now, talking a little bit about supply chain shocks and the fact that they're here to stay. One of the things we should consider is that the supply chain disruptions really will be based on the severity of their frequency. So we know that they occur regularly, but some of them might be more severe, some of them may occur more frequently, but we see disruptions in the supply chain all the time. Let's just look at the last 18 months. You have natural disasters, hurricane, volcano eruptions, trade disputes. For example, between China and the US, union strikes that are affecting port closures, political unrest, regional instability, financial at times instability, and more recently, a lot of supply shortages. And so these disruptions are not going away. There's always going to be uncertainty. And knowing this, companies must be able to navigate the uncertainty, the complexity, and the volatility of today's world, which requires them to evolve their S&OP process. So let's take an example of one of our customers. This is the American Red Cross. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the American Red Cross, they are a nonprofit humanitarian organization that provides emergency assistance, disaster relief, and blood banking and donation services. The Red Cross collects approximately 40% of donated blood in the United States. This represents about 4.5 million blood donations from nearly 2.6 million volunteers. On average, the Red Cross collects the blood and the platelet donations at more than 500 centers across the United States each month. It is also a very complex supply chain. They support 71 distribution centers with 20 manufacturing sites, and the product itself is short shelf life. It has a very short shelf life. Liquid red cells have a 42-day shelf life. The platelets have a 5-day shelf life. And there's also very specific time requirements from collection to delivery, not just because the product has a short shelf life, but also due to safety reasons. So these products cannot be in transit for more than 48 hours, and they cannot be used, of course, past their expiration date. The raw materials and the final products must also be stored at cold temperatures to avoid spoilage, which of course further increases the complexity of its mission. Now, on top of this, one thing I like to always point out with the American Red Cross is that their demand and supply curves are backwards. Now, what I mean by that is that a typical supply chain tends to have more variability on the demand side than on the supply side. However, the Red Cross has the opposite problem where the need is fairly predictable, but the collection donations may vary. Now, during the early stages of the pandemic, With the loss of some of these traditional donor groups, you've got schools and community centers, the Red Cross had over 25,000 blood drives that were canceled. So this represents about 1.2 million fewer blood donations. There's also a lack of demand clarity, as many hospitals were pausing at the time non-critical surgeries. So there was challenges with the fluctuations both on the demand as well as the supply side. Now, this meant that the American Red Cross had to react very quickly and make decisions with a much shorter decision cycle and get very granular data to help them with their response. So what they did was that they changed their S&OP cadence from monthly to weekly. They also moved their demand modeling from national down to regional, so to be able to capture the changes that were happening at those regional and even local levels. And they linked their donor marketing strategy to the S&OP process. So let me explain a little bit more what I mean by that. Now, I talked a little bit about how the Red Cross experienced a lot of blood drive cancellations across the country due to the coronavirus concerns, which resulted in more than 1 million uncollected blood donations. Now, what they did was that they balanced the supply and the demand by reaching out to donors based on the blood type and the frequency by which they're allowed to donate blood. So what that means is that, if you were donating blood, or if you donate blood, I should say, the American Red Cross would send an email out based on your blood type, and then to remind you to give blood based on that allowable frequency. So you can almost think of it as shaping the supply instead of maybe shaping demand. But here they are shaping basically the supply to go ahead and be able to get more of that supply, and in essence, then being able to balance that supply and the demand. Now, this is a great story about a company with a very, very mature S&OP process. I mean, they're linking their digital marketing strategies to the S&OP process, and they were very quickly able to evolve the S&OP process to navigate through the uncertainty. Now, we've been working with this customer for many, many years, and as part of the transformation, they've incurred a lot of different types of benefits from leveraging our technology. But I want to point out some of these results, which are very significant. They've avoided costs, so about $3 million of inventory spoilage costs per year across all of its product lines. They've saved over $500,000 in annual transportation costs and achieved ROI under 3 months. In addition, they've eliminated a lot of the business silos. So they're able to view manufacturing, distribution activities with more precision and dynamically account for all of these supply and demand shifts, as well as being able to model some of these long-term capacity decisions, looking at manufacturing capacity or any type of labor constraints. This is a really great story about the American Red Cross. And now let's shift a little bit and talk about a company that is early in their transformation journey. And in this particular example, they were just in the early stages and coming out of Excel spreadsheets. Now, when we think about the life sciences supply chains, these are about as complex as they come. They need to get not only the right products into the hands of patients when they need them, but also keep up with regulations. They have to worry about shelf life. And at the end of the day, this is what makes very important that end-to-end coordination and orchestration absolutely vital. So the next story I'll be sharing is a nonprofit generic pharmaceutical company that is helping to address the problems of chronic drug shortages. Now, this company, I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of the scale and scope of this company. The company supports 50 plus health systems that own and operate and manage about 1,200 hospitals. And the combined number of hospitals represent about 30% of US hospital beds. And today the company has about 60 SKUs supplied by 9 suppliers that are sold to the 1,200 hospitals, but the list of SKUs is rapidly growing. And from an operating model perspective, they get long-term supply commitments from the hospitals. So they're locking in about a 5-year contract, which in turn helps the company guarantee, have a guarantee from their suppliers and lock in fixed prices. Now, the company follows a strategic philosophy that they keep 6 months of strategic stockpile to buffer the supply chain shocks. And when COVID hit, they were probably one of the few pharmaceutical companies that had quantities on hand to meet the requirements. Now, for many companies, having a 6-month stockpile might seem like locking up capital. But for this company, inventory is a fundamental foundation of their mission. We'll talk a little bit more about that and how it drives some of their financial decisions in a bit. And the business of life-saving medication, what matters to hospitals is, do you have the amount of drugs that I need, when I need it, in the quantities that I need it in? Which means that a lot of people are relying on the same information to make sure that the drugs can be delivered to the hospitals. So you have the supply chain teams, the financial groups, the commercial groups, all looking at the same information. So what becomes very important for them is all of them to be working to make sure that they have that right amount available to meet the demand of the customer, and having that visibility on a single source of truth, and not, for example, going into some type of shared Excel system, or where people might have their own Excel files. Now, what does this mean in terms of kind of that 6-month stockpile? So even if there's a 6-month stockpile, that doesn't necessarily mean that every drug can be stockpiled for that amount. So, what compounds this issue, right, is that pharmaceutical products have a finite shelf life. So it's no good for a company to have this 6-month inventory if it is all going to expire within a month. So the challenge becomes having enough inventory, having enough shelf life, and balancing the amount of cash flow that you've tied up in this inventory. So given these challenges, it's important to synchronize that demand and supply, especially given the long lead time, which can be maybe about 2 months for some of their products. Now, their transformation journey enabled them to align the plan and have the single integrated platform that gave them all the different business functions, from finance, marketing, the supply chain, commercial groups, one source of truth, and eliminate all of those spreadsheets. Now, also by having a single integrated platform, it enabled the company to accelerate their decision-making and proactively identify and respond to changes in the business. And they were able to measure their business performance with real-time KPIs. I wanted to share some of the dashboards that this company was using. And what you see in front of you is an inventory heat map. It shows the days on hand of an individual product. And you can also see forward-looking the months. So based on your sales forecast and purchase forecast, for example, how many days on hand do you have of a drug, so that then the company can proactively look out 6 to 9 months in the future and know if they've placed sufficient purchase orders on that, and also make sure that they don't have too many days on hand or too few days on hand. And visually, what you're seeing here is that if you have less than a certain number, it shows in red. And if you have above a certain number, then that shows in green. Now, all the way at the top of this slide, what you're seeing here is financially how many dollars would need to be committed to inventory based on the sales and purchase plans that they have. Now, it's also critical that if you are looking, for example, on the top right, you can see how much of the inventory is suffering from shelf life expiration. Now, what you're seeing here basically is a picture, is a financial picture, right, of the inventory. And you can see days on hand, dollar commitments, shelf life expiration, all in one place. That makes this very actionable. Now, all the way on the right-hand side, You also see how team members are able to go ahead and collaborate in real time. This is not only the stakeholders are not only within the four walls of the organization, but also externally, so they can go ahead and collaborate and share the plan in real time with key suppliers, and even sales folks, whoever it may be. So making the process very, very collaborative, very intuitive, and in real time. Now, using the supply chain planning solution Atlas Planning Platform, the pharmaceutical company is also able to develop a financial sustainability assessment dashboard, which is what you're seeing in front of you. Now, a lot of these numbers have been sanitized. We're not going to be showing the real numbers. But what I want you to see here is that through this dashboard, it can be customized to include any type of customer, channel, product, category, SKU, region level, currency type, even changing the visualization that you want to see, and so on. So very, very dynamic, the kind of information that you can view at different levels of detail. And I want to point you to the middle bar where you can see by month in the middle of the column how many dollars were shipped, what was the plan, how they are doing budget to actuals, what is the cost of acquiring the drug, which is the what is shipped acquisition cost in the middle. And so the dashboard here is very visual. It helps answer financial questions at that right level of detail. All of this is being connected to the supply chain plan, and as I mentioned, updated in real time. So as these changes are being made, it's also being reflected here. So the organization is able to ask, get answers to questions such as, you're making above your target gross margin by month, or are you making that margin by hospital or all the hospitals? On the right-hand side, you can also see green circles that are telling the planner, it's guiding the planner, you're doing okay every month, or maybe you're not doing okay each month. So you can see here, there's a, in yellow, for example, if there's a single hospital system that's causing them to lose margin, or if there's a single drug that's also causing them to lose that margin. And here, through this visualization, it's alerting the planner that they need to pay attention. Now, while this view is very focused on a pharmaceutical company, the key takeaway is that this is just one of many different types of reporting views that the system is generating to help the planners see, analyze, and manage their financials to a desired target number. This is another great story of how we at John Galt Solutions partner very closely with customers at different stages of the digital transformation journey. I talked a little bit about how the company was challenged to get data, reliable data, especially in an environment where many of their business functions were using Excel. This caused them to really not have that visibility across the functional silos, so that information was stuck. Therefore, what did that mean? That it was just very slow to make that demand supply match, and also they were not being able to make those decisions quickly and informed. Now, their new planning capabilities, they've got fingertip visibility, they can collaborate with a cross-functional team. You saw some of that visually represented. Real-time demand supply match, and really accelerate their supply chain performance, as well as be able to understand and be guided by the system in terms of looking at what decisions need to be prioritized, how are they tracking against any type of corporate and financial goals as well, and making those decisions across different time horizons, be it long-term, mid-term, and even short-term as well. Now, as supply chain leaders continue to face that constant disruption, they also need to bring, I think of it almost as bringing structure into chaos. This requires a shift in traditional supply chain thinking across three main areas. Let me walk you through these. Their first one is outside-in market signals. And what I mean by that is that organizations need to use market signal data, such as point of sale, IoT, telemetry, mobility data, and beyond, and translate these insights into those supply strategies. Now, supply chains also need to be continuously in sync with the real world and leverage a digital supply chain twin. And what I mean by that is being able to continuously model, given all of the data that is being brought into the plan from suppliers, transportation providers, ERPs, manufacturing, warehouses, and beyond, and be able to develop the most feasible plan and assess the different trade-offs, accounting for if there's financial decisions that need to be made, customer service targets, any type of capacity constraints, and model for some of these different financial considerations. So are you looking to get cash flow? Is it about a profitability decision? Are there certain types of taxation that you need to account for? Now, also increasingly, there's a need for tighter link from S&OP to execution. I think of anything the last 18 months have taught us is that, you need to deliver a feasible plan. That is critical. And companies need to align the demand, for example, with these finite resources, such as transportation, labor, and even raw materials and beyond. And let's take an example from a customer we're working with who has this tight integration from S&OP into the execution. We work with an oil and gas distributor that specializes in bulk gas storage and delivery, cylinder filling, and community distribution of these gas systems. And they serve more than 225 locations. Now, even though this company is a distributor of gas, they need to calculate what is the most optimal time to replenish to homes and businesses based on a lot of different rules. And let me explain a little bit more what I mean by that. Some customers, if they are strategic customers or key customers, they might be priority. They can also have some customers that have urgent requests. For example, if they are homes and offices that are impacted by a storm, say a blizzard or very, very cold weather. They also have service. From a service level, they have contractual obligations, as well as they need to track actual usage, right? Some homes and businesses, they consume more gas to heat a home if it's a very cold winter versus if it's a very mild winter. And in addition to all of these different rules, you also have to consider when is it the most optimal time to replenish based on the last time that a home or an office got a delivery, and of course, regular consumption. So the key here is that they need to optimize the routes, the delivery routes, to fill up a tank when it is needed and fill it up as much as possible to avoid a second or a third stop later in the year, for example. So all of these different business rules, there's probably about 300 of these business rules that the oil and gas distributor is constantly planning and replanning against. Now, every day, IoT sensors automatically bring in telemetry data. And the telemetry data is sent, as I mentioned, by this IoT sensor that's placed in the bulk storage tanks. So it allows the company to measure their inventory levels of each customer and accurately plan for replenishment. So here, what's happening is that Atlas Planning Platform is collecting, it's optimizing all this planning data, including daily store level inventory, to reforecast what is that customer demand before automatically releasing new orders and then optimizing the route delivery. So what you're seeing here is a great example of there's a plan that is feasible, but let's include all of this rich data, all of this information that's happening very close to real time. I mean, it's allowing them to go ahead and look at the number of deliveries that they need to make within a daily or weekly cycle and helping them reduce the delivery cost in the process. So in essence, they have a fully automated demand, replenishment, and route delivery process, even accounting for all of the different disruptions that they may face, whether it's a big one, if there's any type of labor constraints where maybe they're not able to get enough drivers, different sizes of the trucks themselves. So there might be some capacity constraints that they need to account for as well. A really good example of linking that S&OP into the execution side. And with that, this concludes the end of the presentation. I would like to thank you once again for your time today. We are always happy to talk about supply chain, our software, our services, and how we're helping companies solve complex supply chain planning problems to make fast and confident decisions. Now, to learn more about our supply chain planning solution, please visit us at johngalt.com. I would also would like to highlight that if you've enjoyed learning about today's customer stories, I'd like to point you towards our page on our website where you can browse our library of success stories, white papers, articles, webinars, and more. Thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to continuing our conversation.